king. He got a bite. He got a bite on beat.
Hey! Grab my kids! Get my kids! Dumb ass motherfucker! Stupid ass bitches! Come on! Grab my kids!
In New York and in many other democratic cities, crime is basically out of control. Many people, or at least many people, will look at it from that standpoint by comparison to the peace that they had once, to the peace that they had once enjoyed literally not too long ago. And of course, the narrative will be painted that it's related to poverty, it's related to people not being able to work, but the government is paying so many people to stay home. It has really nothing to do necessarily with individuals being able to go out and feed themselves, because if anything, then the crimes would be crimes, basically they would be theft, right? Wouldn't necessarily be the slashings that we've had here on the subways, very much recently. There was a stabbing just the other day. I was just watching a stabbing where a guy is riding on a bicycle and he's got a butcher knife or like a big knife in his hand, and he's riding his bicycle and he sees a delivery man and he just stabs him. Right? There's no rhyme or reason to the crime except for what the Bible said in the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 8, where it says in Ecclesiastes chapter 8 and verse 11, it says, "When the sentence for a crime is not speedily executed, the hearts of men become fully set on doing evil." And the reality is that when people realize that they can just get away with a crime, there's no limit to the depths of what many of these individuals will do. The depravity knows, in essence, has no bottom. It would just continue until eventually people come back to a moral code and basically start to execute judgment. And America will continue in this downward spiral. Just recently, Joe Biden just recently posted, it was on TV, where for a lot of these Americans, especially for a lot of you people that are like, we've got the Second Amendment, America has the most guns. And then Joe Biden, straightforwardly said, for a lot of you people who are, pro Second Amendment, he said, realistically speaking, if the whole point is to protect you from the government, he said, you're going to need a lot more than what you got. He said, you're going to need some F-15s and you're going to need some nuclear weapons if you plan on taking out the U.S. government. He said this openly on TV.
The Second Amendment, from the day it was passed, limited the type of people who could own a gun and what type of weapon you could own. You couldn't buy a cannon. Those who say the blood of patriots, and all the stuff about how we're going to have to move against the government. Well, the tree of liberty is not water with the blood of patriots. What's happened is that there never been, if you want to think you need to have weapons to take on the government, you need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons. The point is that there's always been the ability to rationally limit the type of weapon that can be owned and who can own it.
And people wonder why we're in the state that we're in, why America is in essence just tumbling down and spiraling out of control. And we are literally just at the beginning. America still holds the world currency that is backed by nothing but bombs. It's not backed by oil, it's not backed by gold, it's just literally backed by the US military and the military complex that will basically bomb any country or any groups of country that plan to go in a different direction, except for China. They're not ready to tackle that one. Even though you hear a lot of stories about America's getting ready, I don't think America's ready for that smoke just yet. And neither are the American people. It's one of the reasons why I say, for a lot of people who, and maybe we'll talk about this again in another video, But it would not surprise me moving forward. It shouldn't surprise you. You will see more crime, especially here, living in the city. You know, I've seen many of the men completely emasculate. I don't know how many men I see walking around in dresses nowadays when I get onto the subway to get to the hospital. It amazes me how I see the amount of emasculate men that basically have either live in the city. I've never seen it before. I've lived here in 10 years. I've lived in the city. Typically, you've never seen it this depraved, where it's very much like Sodom and Gomorrah. Just recently, I think it was up here in the Bronx, I forget where maybe it was in Chicago, where you had one person shot dead, 5 people shot and injured, and you see the ambulances coming in, and you see the women twerking against the ambulance, people sitting on top of the ambulance. This is just basically like a modern day Rome, right? Literally watching Sodom and Gomorrah, and of course it's all by design by, of course, the American government, and that's why you see so much crime. It's why some people are willing to go to the depths that they normally might not, because they would be fearful. They would be fearful of police coming in, individuals being killed, and now police officers are afraid to execute judgment. Why? Because they're fearful that they may be thrown in jail. The state's gonna come for them. Nobody's gonna support them, and so they just kind of like, look, we're gonna let it ride, right? We're just gonna let it ride, and this is what the people want. You look in these different neighborhoods, and the people are like, defund the police, and we're like, and you have like more reasonable individuals that are like, you have people getting shot 50, 60 times in a weekend in your neighborhoods. Are you sure you want the police defunded? And they're like, we want. It's just like in Jesus' day, right? Where Pontius Pilate is there, and he's like, I find no fault with this man. And they're like, we want, impale him. We free Barabbas. Free Barabbas. The crowds chant. And this is what goes on today in our modern society. You have the modern day society of what has played out time and time again in reference to the Bible, where the people just go off the deep end. People just go off the deep end. Very much so when the nation of Israel came out of Egypt, and literally within days are erecting a golden calf as Moses is coming back from receiving the law from God, and these people are already drenched in idolatry and fornication. Like Moses, like, we just literally came out last week. How are you people doing this? And that's why God said, let me wipe them out, and I will make you into a nation. And Moses said, no, don't do it. He said, don't do it, because then the people will say he brought them out just to slaughter them. But the reality is, for many of these individuals, that's why the elites look at it that way. That's why the elites look at it. They look down upon these individuals, and they're like, these people are useless eaters. Let us do away with them. And that's why you see what you see. That's why you see the sickness. It's why you see what goes on in many of these cities. Why is it that it's primarily the black people and minorities that they pretend that they want to help, but then overwhelmingly who are primarily impacted by the outcomes of what they put into place, the different laws and regulations that they put into place? I mean, you look at all of these liberal democratic cities that have now fallen into socialism and communism, and overwhelmingly these are the people who suffer. And they will sit there and they'll point to all these different things. It's because they literally look at these people very much like in Jesus' day, where the religious leaders or those who were in charge, they look down at the people as, what would the Bible refer to them as, or what did they refer to them in that time? The Amharetz, right? Which is a Hebrew expression for the people of the dirt. And that's how they viewed them. They viewed them as the common people, and that's why Jesus looked at them and exposed them in his day that although you claim to be the ones who are responsible for these people, you lead them astray. You lead these people astray. And that's why Jesus denounced it. The more things change, the more they stay the same. The Bible plays out from generation to generation to generation to generation. The book of Samuel that talks extensively about how the people no longer wanted to live under God, and they said, we want you to erect a king. We want to be just like everybody else. We want to have a king just like all these other people. We want a king to lead us into battle when need to. And Samuel explained to them very in-depthly that if you go this route, there will be no return. And then God said, let it be. He said, if they're not rejecting you, Samuel, he said, it's me that they are rejecting. As a result of that, this plays out time and time and time again. It doesn't surprise me when I see this going on. The only thing that you can do is try to preserve yourself, to stay away from all these things so that you yourself get caught up. Like a book of Proverbs says, is that the shrewd one proceeds to see all these things that goes on, and then he proceeds to conceal himself.